Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandat Pranam to everyone. So we'll do a small kirtan and then we'll start with the class. Yeah. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yamunatira Vanachari, Yamunatira Vanachari, Jaya Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadramai, Jaya Sudarshana, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya 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 Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Shri Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Mai ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Shri Shri Panchatattva ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. So I'll share my screen. So we will be starting from sloka number 24. There are two slokas which are very important. So we'll start with 24 and then I will only read the sloka 24 and then, but we will read the purports of 24 and 25, 26 also, because they are very important and they are linked to this part 2. So we are discussing about Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15. Part 1 was discussed last week. Now part 2, we are discussing part 2 from Shloka 24. Prayanetad Bhagavata Ishwarasya Vichestitam Mitho Nignanti Bhutani Bhavyanti Chayan Mitaha. Synonyms. Prayena etat, it is almost by, Bhagavataha, of the personality of Godhead, Ishwarasya, of the Lord, Vicheshtitam, by the will of, Mitaha, one another, Nignanti, to kill, Bhutani, the living beings, Bhavayanti, as also protect, Cha, also, Yat, of whom, Mitaha, one another. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Today is the Tirobhav of Srila Prabhupada. So let us read carefully from Srimad Bhagavatam, which will benefit us a lot. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Actually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and at other times they protect one another. Purport. According to the anthropologists, there is nature's law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. But they do not know that behind the law of nature is the supreme direction of the supreme personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that the law of nature is executed under the direction of the Lord. Whenever therefore there is peace in the world, it must be known that it is due to the good will of the Lord. And whenever there is upheaval in the world, it is also due to the supreme will of the Lord. Not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. Whenever, therefore, there is disobedience of the established rules enacted by the Lord, there is war between men and nations. The surest way to the path of peace, therefore, is dovetailing everything to the established rule of the Lord. The established rule is that whatever we do, whatever we eat, whatever we sacrifice, or whatever we give in charity must be done to the full sanction of the Lord. No one should do anything, eat anything, sacrifice anything, or give anything in charity against the will of the Lord. Discretion is the better part of valor, and one must learn how to discriminate between actions which may be pleasing to the Lord and those which may not be pleasing to the Lord. An action is thus judged by the Lord's pleasure or displeasure. There is no room for personal whims. We must always be guided by the pleasure of the Lord. Such actions is called yoga karmasu kaushalam, or actions performed which are linked with Supreme Lord. That is art of doing things perfectly. So we'll read the translation of 25-26. O King, as in the ocean of bigger and stronger aquatic swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the Supreme Personality Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger Yadu to kill the weaker and the bigger Yadu to kill the smaller. In the material world, the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest are lost because in the material world, there is disparity between conditioned souls due to everyone's desire to lord it over the material resources. This very mentality of the lording it over the material nature is the root cause of conditioned life. And to give facility to such imitation lords, the illusory energy of the Lord has created a disparity between conditioned living beings by creating the stronger and the weaker in every species of life. The mentality of lording it over the material nature and the creation has naturally created a disparity and therefore the law of struggle for existence. In the spiritual world, there is no disparity, nor is there such a struggle for existence. In the spiritual world, there is no struggle for existence because everyone there exists eternally. There is no disparity because everyone wants to render service to the Supreme Lord, and no one wants to imitate the Lord in becoming the beneficiary. The Lord, being creator of everything, including the living beings, factually is the proprietor and enjoyer of everything that be. But in the material world, by the spell of Maya, illusion, Maya or illusion, this eternal relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is forgotten. And so the living being is conditioned under the law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. Om Ajnanatimirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayambhupakadama Yam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guruho Sri Yutapadakamlam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Itinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patithanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarunda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai. So, thank you devotees for joining. So let us discuss. There are two important things that part 2 in these 2 shlokas that we have in the translations that we have read. The 5 last lines of this shloka and the other purport also. So see this here. We are talking about pleasing to the Lord. Discretion is better. Pleasing to the Lord. Any action that's judged by the Lord, pleasure or displeasure, there is no room for personal whims. We must always be guided by the pleasure of the Lord. See here, we are seeing Srila Prabhupada is saying we have to be, every time the Lord should be the beneficiary, right? That is the most important thing. But here, if we see here what's happening, we are the last 5 lines of the second shloka. Here, what's happening here? There is no disparity between, everyone wants to render service here in the spiritual world. No one wants to imitate the Lord and in becoming the beneficiary, right? So what's happening in this material world is everyone wants to imitate the Lord and they want to become the beneficiary, right? So that is the main problem. That is the reason. See, why people want to imitate the Lord? Because they want to become beneficiary. Why they want to become beneficiary? Because they're envious. The Lord says, Mamevamsho jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana manashashtan indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. Mama eva amsha. That means we are eternally his part and parcel. But what happened? We have seen in last week also, Vidramada Prabhuji has said very nicely the meaning of Bhagavan. Bhagavan means what? He has 6 opulences in full, right? What is that? Wealth, power, fame, beauty, wisdom, and renunciation. 6 opulences in full. It's not like little here, little there. No, in full. And also the Bhagavan, he has 4 propensities. He is the supreme creator, supreme proprietor, supreme controller, and supreme enjoyer. A person who creates, anyone who creates, he proprates, right? And when he proprates, he will control it. And through that controlling, he enjoys. So it's a natural thing. But the thing is, when we see the Lord doing all those things in the spiritual world, we become envious. Oh, the Lord is doing everything. I'm not. I also want to enjoy like the Lord. The moment we think like that, we are being thrown into this material world. We have been given a chance to understand. Whether we can compete with the Lord or not, right? So that is the main important thing here. So the what we have seen in the part 1 was that Arjuna, he understands. Arjuna says, "Oh, Lord Krishna has left me." He thinks about what he has done for him, all in the beginning, right? For them, he has helped them so much, right? He gives credit to the Lord. He helps. He says to himself, "You've been so merciful. You have helped me in lifting the bow and arrow, so that I would able to kill the fish and then marry Draupadi." And also he was able to defeat Indra and his associates. And also Draupadi was helped when she was disrobed and disrespected by the Kauravas, right? So, and also he says, "You have helped us in missing the wrath of Durvasa Muni," right? He also in so many ways. And also he thinks, "Oh, you have helped me in when I was when I had to wage a war with Lord Shiva, and because of your energy, I was able to please Lord Shiva, and he gave his weapon to me." Like that. And also because of you, I was able to defeat the great warriors of Kauravas. They're not any easy warriors, right? They are all very wonderful warriors, like Bhishma Dev and Kripacharya, Dronacharya, all the teachers. It's not easy to defeat them, but still he gives, and that's the reason he gives credit. "Oh, my dear Lord, I couldn't understand your greatness, and I belittled you here and there. I dared to engage you as my charioteer. How dare I do that?" So he is always thinking, he's giving credit to the Lord, and he's thinking about the Lord, because the Lord has left him, right? He's thinking about the Lord. And whenever I minimized your value, you still excused me as a father would excuse a son, like that, right? And he says, "Oh, my bow and chariot has become void and null, like a clarified butter on ashes, and seeds that are sowed in and barren land." He talks like that. So he's thinking about that, and then now he's thinking, he want to give credit to the Lord. Instead of, see here, Arjuna is also doing, what is he doing? He's not giving credit to the Lord. Here people want to imitate and saying, oh, I am the Lord of the material world. But here Arjuna is telling, you have done it. Because of you only I have come to this stage. Otherwise this wouldn't have happened, like that, right? So becoming the beneficiary, that is very important to understand here. We are not the beneficiary, the Lord is the beneficiary, right? um, and beneficiary means what? Means he is the enjoyer, right? But what's happening here, the jiva has come here to enjoy in this. In what way? Everyone want to become wealthy, powerful, beautiful. They want to gain intelligence, wisdom, etc., etc. Right? In different ways, they want to compete with the Lord. That means we are actually competing with the Lord. And recently, I've heard a lecture from Gauranga Prabhu. I think he says there are, in this material world, all the jivas have problem with 3 C's. What is that? Compare, complain, and criticize. What is that? When we go here and there, we compare with people. Oh, I have this, I don't have that. They have that, I don't have this, like that, right? And then we complain. Because we don't want to take the blame on us, so we start complaining. Oh, because of you only I have become like that, etc., etc. And then we criticize. So what's happening here? And in this material world, there is always some are given lots of facilities and some are given less facilities, right? So that is the reason there is a survival of the fittest. If you and what is the output of all these 3 C's? Anxiety, anxiety, and anxiety. If you see, Srila Prabhupada has given us 4 regulative principles. What is that? No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex, right? So, but if you see in the developed countries, all these 4 are are legal, right? Gambling is legal, illicit sex is legal, intoxication is legal. Of course, drugs is not, but at least alcohol, smoking, etc. And also meat eating is all legal. Why? They want to gain taxes. They don't understand the value of God, how to give attention to the Lord. They want to gain attention for themselves. They want to enjoy, right? And in these 4, what's happening? People are losing their mind, and they're not able to work for themselves, right? When people are becoming alcoholic, they take drugs, etc. They gamble, they lose all their money, they lose their peace. First of all, they gain a lot of anxiety. And in Bhagavad Gita it is said, when you have anxiety, how can there be peace, right? The Lord says like that. So what's happening in this in this material world? The governments don't know how to rule their population properly, and they want to gain only taxes, that's it, so that they can spend money on themselves and little here and there, right? So they don't understand how to gain money. That's why they have legalized all these bad things. And what's happening here? The people, instead of being, yes, they might have, maybe they are in developed countries, yes, they have a lot of facilities, but the problem is they don't have contentment in life, right? There is no contentment, there is no peace. What is the use of that government? What is the use of that means when we are competing with the Lord in these four things, that means we want to enjoy independent of the Lord. And when we compete with the Lord, when we are in war, we have waged a war with the Lord, right? And what will happen? Obviously we will lose, right? If Ukraine is gaining some ammunition from USA and 1% of ammunition, and it goes to war with USA, what will happen? It will lose, obviously, right? In the same way, Jiva is gaining little things from the nature, and it want a lot of the material nature, and it want to wage a war with the Lord. Obviously, the Lord will win, and we will lose. So that's why the Lord says in 18.66, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja Amtva Sarva Papebhyo Mokshaishyami Masuchaha, right? That means you accept defeat. You now you are trying to become a master, but if you remove all the rubbish from your head and stop competing with me and accept me as a master, and you be a servant, then you will get out of this material world. So that's why, and you will come back to the your original home. Now here now because of envious, and what's happening here, we have forgotten the relationship with the Lord because of Maya or illusion. Now Arjuna is missing the Lord. When we generally miss someone, what do we do? When we miss someone, what do? We remember their instructions, right? We remember their instructions, interactions, especially the interactions, and if they have done something good, we think about them, right? So in the same way, Arjuna also starts thinking about the instructions, what instructions the Lord has given to him, like that. Right. So all these instructions that were imparted to him in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Here, Srila Prabhupada is telling that these instructions are not just for Arjuna, but for all the time. That means for everybody and in all the lands. That means it is not just for our earthly people. It's for all the universes. And Srila Prabhupada also says Vedic literatures like Upanishads, Puranas, the Vedanta Sutras take a long time to read and understand. And even if we read, we can't understand properly. Therefore, what has happened? The Lord has given us the essence of all the Vedic wisdom in Bhagavad Gita. So that's why, right, the merciful Lord has left behind the great teachings of Bhagavad Gita so that one can take the instructions of the Lord even when he is not visible, even though the Lord is not visible to the material eyesight, right? And Srila Prabhupada also says in Bhagavad Gita is actual spiritual sound representation of the Lord. And he is also an incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between the Srimad Bhagavatam representative of the Lord himself, right? The sound representation and the Lord himself. We can also get same benefit from Bhagavad Gita as same as Arjuna had in the personal association of the Lord. See, Srila Prabhupada is telling very nicely that means he's telling us the importance of reading Bhagavad Gita. Here, it is also said that the Lord is supreme enjoyer, but when the jiva, who is qualitatively one with the supreme, want to enjoy separately from the Lord, that becomes a wishful desire only. That means it is only a wish, it will become wishful desire. That means it's not going to happen. If we want to enjoy away from the Lord, it's not going to happen. And the difference in consciousness is the distinction between the two, right? Therefore, the living being is therefore eternally one and different simultaneously. That is the whole instructions of Bhagavad Gita. Right? And the Bhagavad Gita stands on this principle. It's called Achintya Bheda Tattva. We might be qualitatively same, but quantitatively there is no comparison with the Lord. And that's the reason we have to understand that we cannot enjoy separately from the Lord. The Lord and the living beings are Sanatana, eternal. Right? The Lord's abode is also Sanatana. The Lord is inviting all of us to the Lord's abode. And the process which helps the jivas to approach the Lord's abode is called Sanatana Dharma. But we got a problem here, right? We can't reach the eternal abode of the Lord without being free from the misconception of material identification. See, like if people don't understand, I'm a soul, I'm not this body, I'm a servant, I'm not this master. When we don't get to that conception, then we cannot go back to Godhead. So that's the reason Bhagavad Gita gives us the clue how to achieve this stage of perfection. Now, Arjuna is missing the Lord. And what does he do? He takes shelter of the great knowledge imparted to him in this battlefield. So in text 28, Sutta Goswami says, thus being deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship and in thinking of the lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and free from all material contamination. See, the Lord is non-different from his name, form, quality, and pastimes, entourage, and specific actions. Slowly, these instructions begin to eliminate the tinges of material contamination in the mind of Arjuna. And if we read it, it will remove our material contamination also. That we have to understand here. Here, the Srila Prabhupada is comparing the Lord with sun, which dissipates the darkness of ignorance. The Lord's appearance within the mind can drive away the miserable material effects. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has recommended constant chanting of the name of the Lord for protection from all contaminations of the material world. Why are we giving? Why Lord Chaitanya has asked us to chant constantly? What is chanting? Chanting is nothing but giving attention. What is chanting actually? What is the name? Well, like Hare Krishna Mantra is nothing but there is no difference between the name and the Lord, right? So that's why we are chanting. Chanting means we are giving, instead of giving attention to our senses, what are we doing? We are giving attention to the Lord through his name. Here there are a few things that we have to understand while chanting. What is that? One is abhyasa. We are doing abhyasa, right? When we are chanting, we are doing abhyasa. That is very important. Next thing, Jnana and Vairagya, right? We have to gain knowledge and we have to have Vairagya. And when we chant, that generally what happens, we remember the to-do list, we see a lot of, like we think about the problems, a lot of things that come into our mind while chanting. What are those things? The problems that we have. So for example, if we hate someone, they come into our mind. If we like someone, they come into our mind, like that. But when we chant properly, especially when we have problems, but when we chant, that means a lot of things. Oh, this person is having faith. We are showing faith on the Lord that, oh, problem is there, but the Lord will mitigate the problem later, like that. See, these four things are very important: Abhyasa, Jnana, Vairagya, and faith. So that's when we chant, what happens? We move from my consciousness to Krishna consciousness. That is the most important thing, right? We have to understand that. And then in 29th, Arjuna, constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion, and as a result, all the trash in his thoughts subsided. He is entrapped with so many pleasing and displeasing elements which are false and temporary. But when we do devotion service, we are getting in touch with the transcendental Lord. That we have to understand here, right? So as soon as Arjuna turned his attention towards the instructions of the Lord, as in Bhagavad Gita, his eternal association with the Lord got manifested, and he felt free from all material contamination. See? So that's why in the same way, if we turn ourselves to the Lord by chanting, by reading books, Srila Prabhupada books, association of the Lord, like association of the devotees, we will also feel free from the material contamination. So here in 30th sloka, because of the Lord's pastimes and activities and because of his absence, it appeared that Arjuna forgot instructions left by the personality of Godhead. But factually, this was not the case. And again, he became the Lord of his senses. So all the pastimes, activities of the Lord are spiritual. But for the layman, they appear to be as material actions. So that's why in the war, Pandavas were there and Kauravas were also there. But only Pandavas understood the Lord and they took the shelter. So that's why we have to understand when Arjuna started to remember. That's the reason Arjuna started to remember the instructions of the Lord, because and then what did he do? He revived his consciousness. In the same way, we should also read and understand the Bhagavad Gita, so that we will also revive our consciousness as assured by the Lord in the sloka, right? In 18.65, the Lord says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhya jivam namaskuru mame vaishyashi satyam te prati jane priyosime, right? So actually here, Srimad says the Lord was just executing his mission and Arjuna was just a paw in his mission, right? But and the problem here is the mind. We want to do so many things. We want to serve the Lord, but the mind goes here and thither, right? Arjuna says, "Oh, I can control the wind and everything, but the mind, but not the mind." So it's the same problem with us also. We are not able to control the mind. So let us. There is a wonderful lecture by Srila Prabhupada. We'll listen to it for just a few minutes, and then we will continue the class. Sri Hari Prabhu, can you please?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
From the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evolves the mind, whose thoughts and reflections give rise to desire.
वैकारिका विकल्पानां मनस्तत्त्वं अजायत तत्संकल्प विकल्पानां वर्तते कामसम्भवम्. So this mind is material because it is the product of transformation of the modes of goodness. Then gradually being contaminated by different kinds of material desires, it becomes degraded. Kamesha, Krodhesha, Rajaguna Samudhamam. When it is deteriorated, then from the standard of goodness it comes to Rajaguna. And Rajaguna means lusty desires, unended desires. Then if desires are not fulfilled, then there is Krodha. Anger. In this way, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Matsarya, everything becomes very prominent and we become servant of these propensities, Kam, Krodh, Moha, Matsarya, Mada, Lobha. This is called illusion, gradually degraded mind. And the business of the mind is Sankalpa and Vikalpa. Sankalpa means decide to do something, and Vikalpa means again to reject it. That is the business of mind. Everyone desires the peacefulness of mind, but the material mind, the nature is Sankalpa and Vikalpa, restlessness. You cannot fix out. So if you can control the senses by the yogic, mystic yogic process, the mechanical endeavor, how to control the mind, then you can again be placed in the original spiritual status. That is the yoga system. The yoga system is recommended to persons whose mind is very restless. Everyone's mind is restless. Not a particular man mind is restless. Everyone's. But it is very difficult also to bring the mind into peaceful status. So long the desires are there, it is not possible to bring the mind in complete peace and tranquility. It is not possible. Because the sankalpa vikalpa bhattate kama sambhava. So long there is desire, so it is not possible to bring the mind under control. Therefore Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Kaviraj Goswami, that even the pious actors, those who are acting very piously, those who are acting impiously, sinfully, there is no question of peace of the mind. That is not possible. Even those who are acting very piously, that is also not possible. You cannot control even the mind in that way. Then those who are desiring to stop these material activities completely, pious or impious, they also cannot control the mind. And then the yogis, the first group who are interested in pious activities, they are karmis. And those who are neither interested in pious activities or impious activities, they want to stop all kinds of activities, just like the Buddha philosophy says, nirvana. Stop the activities of the mind or desires. On that status also it is not possible to control the mind. Meditation and the mukti-kami and then siddhi-kami, the yogis, they also cannot control the mind. What to speak of ordinary man who are neither interested in pious activities or in mukti or yogic perfection. So when Krishna advised Arjuna to practice yoga for controlling the mind in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna refused. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, you are advising me to control the mind by practicing yoga, but I have no such opportunity. Because I am a family man, I am also a politician, royal family, I have to see things, administration of the kingdom. And besides that, in family life, I have to seek for my material interest. So how it is possible for me to control the mind? So he flatly said, Chanchalahi mana Krishna pramati balavadram tasyaham nigraham manne vayureva suduska. My dear Krishna, I think the mind is very, very restless. Chanchala, mana Krishna, pramati, as madman. As madman is always restless. And very strong. I want to control the mind, but that does not come under control. So this is the position. Therefore, you are asking me to control the mind. Tasya aham nigraham manne vayureva suduska. I think it is more difficult than controlling the wind. Suppose there is very strong wind, and if you want to stop it, it is not possible. There is cyclone. Similarly, Arjuna has compared the mind with the speed of cyclone, how it is to be controlled. So completely denied. But Krishna said, just to encourage Arjuna, that he should not be disappointed because he could not control the mind, but still, because his mind was always engaged in the lotus feet of Krishna. He is the best of all the yogis. Yoginam api sarvesam madgata antaratmana sadhyamana bhajati jo mang sami yuktatamu. He encouraged Arjuna that don't be disappointed, because your mind is always engaged in me. Arjuna might be anything, but he was always thinking of Krishna. He was always associating with Krishna. He did not know anything else Krishna. That is the position of first class yogi. Otherwise, if you try to control the mind from kam, krodh, lo, moha, matsarya, that is not possible. You have to change the position of such activities. Narottam Thakur, here it is said that kama sambhava. Kama means desire. The mind is restless, always desiring. So the best policy to control the mind is to desire how to spread Krishna consciousness. This is the best. Kama Krishna karmarpane. Narottam Thakur has said that you cannot be free from desire. That is not possible. This is useless. They say that you become desireless. No, that is not possible. How can I? If I become desireless, I become dead. So long I am living entity, I must desire. I cannot check it. Therefore, kama means desire. So, at the present moment we are desiring how to become happy in this material world, how to acquire so much money, how to acquire this, how to acquire this, how to get this, how to get that. This is kama. So this brain taxation, if you engage in Krishna's service, how to spread Krishna consciousness, how to convince people about Krishna, how to take them to the Krishna's desire, sarvadharman parityajan, in this way, if you go on making plan for spreading Krishna consciousness, then your mind is controlled. You cannot stop desire, that is not possible. The kama, sambhava, sankalpa, vikalpa, vyam, Bhattate kama sambhava. This is the mind position. I am desiring something, and if it is not very palatable, then I reject it. I accept another desire. This is. You cannot keep the mind vacant, even for a single moment. Nobody has got this experience. The mind is vacant. If by force we are trying to do that, it is simply laboring. It is not possible. Just like to concentrate one's mind in the vacant. Klesha udikatarastesam abbhaktya sapta chetasam. Klesha udikatarastesam. Impersonal and void. If you want to engage your mind in the impersonality or voidness or variegatedness, it is simply very, very difficult. The best easy way of controlling the mind, because Krishna has said that yoginam api sarvesam madgata antaratmana sadhyavan bhajati jo mam. That is the way. Anyone who is making plan, the plan making, kama sambhava means plan making. You see the whole world, the big politicians, in our government, central government, there is a planning commission. Perhaps everyone of you know it, planning commission. For the last 20 years, they are making simply plans, and no plan has become successful. Every plan is unsuccessful, and the result is 8 rupees kilo rice, your staple food. The plan has come successfully to bring rice 8 rupees per kilo. That is not possible. So long you are materially affected and making plan how to get out of it. The material nature is so strong that it will baffle all your plans, and therefore you have to remain perpetually restless. One plan you make and it is baffled by the material nature, stringent laws of nature. And at last, making plan, one day the time comes and immediately orders, please vacate your presidency, your prime ministership. Although I am trying to make plans, successful plans up to the point of death, pralayanta, asuric plan, up to the end of life. And then he entrusts. He says, my dear son, my dear daughter, I could not fulfill this plan, so you do it. Now I hand it over to you. And the son also going on making plan. It will never be fulfilled. That is the verdict of the Shastra. Durasaya je bahirattha manika. Durasaya. It is impossible. Therefore this sankalpa vikalpa, accepting some plan and rejecting again, this is going on perpetually. It is never fulfilled. Neither it will be fulfilled at any time. And for making this plan, sankalpa vikalpa, perpetually, I am giving up one kind of body, I am accepting another body, I am giving up the residence of one planet, I am going to the heavenly planet. Uddham gachanti sattva madhye tishtanti rajosa jaganna gunavrittintastha adho gachanti tamasa. Plan in the modes of goodness and passion, in ignorance. So different plans, different kinds of body, different residential quartering, different planets, different... We have got experience even in Bombay. If one is living here in Bombay for 50 years, how many plans he has had made and how many apartments he has changed, and still the plan making business is going on. Everyone has got this experience. It is not very difficult. So as it is going on in this life, in this plan of life, similarly it is going on life after life, this plan making business. So the intelligent person, they should understand how to stop this unlimited plan making business. Still there is no solution. That is called athatha brahma jigyasa. That is life. Athatha brahma jigyasa. When one is inquisitive to know the broader plan, Brahma plan. Brahma means the biggest. Brihatya, biggest. The biggest plan, if anyone wants to understand, becomes inquisitive, then his life, real life begins. Athatha brahma jigyasa. So where from brahma jigyasa? And brahma jigyasa, this is the ordinary jigyasa inquiry. What is the price of rice today, or what is the situation of strike, what is the situation of this, that we can ask from the newspaper or from any one friend. But so far, brahma jigyasa, inquiry of Brahma, then where shall you inquire? Will you go to the exchange market or in the other market? No. Tad vijnanartham sa gurumeva abhigachet. Sa gurumeva abhigachet. That is the intention of the Vedas. That you must find out, Guru. Samitmani sutriyam brahmanishtam. Guru means brahmanishtam. Brahmanishtam, that is the Guru's qualification. And Srotriyam, one who has heard from the disciplic succession. He is Guru, not anyone, magician, no. Guru, as Krishna said, Krishna is the original Guru. He is Brahma's Guru. Then who can be better Guru than Krishna? Tene Brahma Nida Adikavaya. He instructed Brahma. Brahma instructed Nandan. And Nandan instructed Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva has given us so many literatures. This is called Parampara system. Vedavyas. Vyasadeva has given us 4 Vedas, Sam, Yajuri, Atharva. Then explained them in the 108 Puranas. Then again he has summarized them in Vedanta Sutra. Then again he has explained the Vedanta Sutra by Srimad Bhagavatam. Brahma Sutra Bhasya. Then in every chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam you will find this statement by Vyasadeva. Brahma Sutra Bhasya. Brahma Sutra Bhasya is not that Sankar's Bhasya, Sharirak Bhasya. That is artificial. Here is the Brahma Sutra Bhasya. Brahma Sutra is written by Vyasadeva. And because he knew that in future so many rascals will misinterpret this Brahma Sutra, therefore he compiled personally the Bhasya of Brahma Sutra, that is Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhasya Brahma Sutra na Vedatha Paribhinhitam. The meaning of the Vedas is completely described, and it is the original comment on Brahma Sutra. Therefore you see Srimad Bhagavatam begins from the words of Brahma Sutra. Jivasya tattva jigyasa, as it is said in the Brahma Sutra, athat Brahma jigyasa. The Bhagavad says, the jivasya tattva jigyasa, the living entity's only business is to inquire about the absolute truth. Na jastiha karma bhi, no other business. Dharmartha kamo mokha. So, dharma, generally people think that becoming religious, we shall be economically developed. Dharma, artha, we shall get artha. We shall be, that is, automatically it comes. If you are actually following the religious principle, artha will come. There is no doubt. But we do not know what is dharma. That is the difficulty. That you have to learn from Krishna. Athatha Brahma Jigyasa, from the Guru. And what Guru says, Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam saranam. This is dharma. Anything else, there is all cheating. Dharma projita koitavatra, koitava. Koitava means cheating. And Siddhartha Swami says, this moksha is also another cheating. Moksha is another, I shall make me void. I shall finish my existence, individual existence, I shall merge into the existence of the Absolute. This conception, moksha, mukti, is also commented by Siddhartha Swami. This is another cheating. another cheating. Because there cannot be moksha. You cannot become one with the Supreme. How it can be? As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vamsa Jiva Bhuta Jiva Loki Sanatana. Sanatana. You are part and parcel of the Supreme. How you can become one? So this kind of attempt is also cheating. You cannot become one. Because eternally, Sanatana, eternally you are different. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that myself, my dear Arjuna, yourself, and all the soldiers and kings who have assembled in this battlefield, they were the same individual in the past, and they are individual now, and they will continue to remain individual. So where there is oneness. In the past, present, future, the individuality is there. So it is a concoction to finish the individuality. It is called spiritual suicide. Just like if a man becomes disappointed and he cuts his own throat or hangs him somewhere or other, eats some poison to finish, does it mean that he is finished? Nahannate hannavane sarire. He is a rascal. He does not know by finishing this body he is finished. No, that is not possible. The result is, because he violated the rules of nature, he becomes a ghost. That is his life. One who commits suicide, he becomes a ghost. Ghost means he does not get this material body. He remains in the subtle body, mind, intelligence. Therefore ghost can go because he is in the mind. Mind speed is very strong. If you have got this material body, you cannot go immediately 100 miles off. But if you are in the mental body, you can go immediately. 1,000 miles, immediately, within a second. So the ghost, they can play something wonderful, but they are not happy, because they have no gross body. They want to enjoy. He's materialist. He has committed suicide for some material want. So he is in want of fulfilling material desire. He could not fulfill in this body, therefore commits suicide. But the desire is there. The desire is there. And he cannot fulfill it, he becomes perplexed. Therefore the ghost creates disturbance sometimes. So in this way, desires cannot be finished. That's not possible. Kama sambhava. It is not possible. Therefore the best thing is to fix up your mind in Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, done.
Thank you, Sri Hari Prabhuji, for sharing the class. Thank you so much for your help. So today, being Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day, I thought, whom can we listen about mind other than Srila Prabhupada? So that's the reason we played a little. Very nice class. It was very nice class. What did Srila Prabhupada say? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Madamascharya, right? And accept and reject. Restless mind for everybody. And desires, cannot stop desires. And so what do we have to do? We have to use all our senses for the Lord. That's what Srila Prabhupada said. So for example, people may say, oh, I am not able to, I can't preach like others. But we can do Shastradan, book distribution, right? We can help in, for example, a teacher might want to teach, but they don't have the facilities for Zoom. So we can give our them and we can pay for that monthly subscription, whatever it is. And also we, like for example, we have so many cities, but Govindas is not there. Prasadam is not being distributed to the general public. So we can have Govindas, right? And some cities we have so many temples, but there is no Govindas. So it's like that. We can utilize all our resources for in the service of the Lord in that way. So thank you to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much. So now coming again to here to the 31st sloka. Because of his possession, spiritual assets that he was freed from the three modes of material nature and placed in transcendence. There was no longer any chance of his becoming entangled in birth and death, for he was freed from material form. So what's happening here is we have to understand, we have to remove our designations, me and mine. Is duality actually. Everything belongs to the Lord, right? Prakriti, we are utilizing the Prakriti, but it is running via the energy of the Lord. And we use it to maintain ourselves, a family. Then we say it is me and mine. Pardon me. So that is the problem, right? We talk about me and mine. That is the cause of bewilderment to the conditioned soul. When we stay in Krishna consciousness and not in my consciousness, then we become free from the reaction of three material modes of nature. and which can be achieved only by the pure devotional service. So we saw, right, people are utilizing the resources very nicely, and it is known that in England, in every house, there is one person who is mentally ill. See, they say themselves as a developed country, but what's happening? By utilizing the resources in the wrong way, by not following the 4 regulative principles, and totally they do meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and all that. What is happening? They're not getting peace, and not only that, what is happening? They're getting into they're getting mental problems in each and every house. And when one person has mental problem in the house, everybody suffers in the house. So see, by utilizing the resources for our senses will not give us peace. That we have to understand here. So in the same way, Yudhishthira Maharaj also understands. He sees upon hearing the Lord's Krishna's returning to his abode, and upon understanding the end of Yadu's dynasty, earthly manifestation, Maharaj Yudhishthira decided to go back home, back to Godhead. So Yudhishthira Maharaj also thinks, okay, it's time to give attention to the Lord, and right, he started beginning to deliberate on the Lord's way of appearance and departure. So we see there is a shloka, right? Janma karma chame divyam evam yovit tatvadha tyaktva deham punarjanmana iti mameti so Arjuna. So if we understand the appearance and disappearance of the Lord, why? Because they are transcendental, they are divine, and they are transcendental, right? So when we understand, then we can. That means what we will understand out of those pastimes, we'll understand that our is very high. He killed Putana just by she comes to give him milk which is laced with poison. He let her become his mother, but the poison gets into his body, but he doesn't get killed. But Putana, he takes her life air out of her and she dies. In the same way, Trinavarta comes. Trinavarta, he thinks, oh, it is a small child, I'll take him up and I'll kill him, like that. So Krishna, he is able to lift Krishna at that time. But when he goes high up in the sky, Krishna becomes so heavy, Trinavarta falls down and he dies. And in the same way, Aghasura is a very big snake, and its upper lid, it is said that Aghasura's upper lid touches the sky. That means it is such a big snake, and it keeps its mouth open. So all these gopas and all, they are in the forest at that time. So they think, oh, there is something here, let us see. And then they go into the Aghasura's mouth. But Krishna is seeing, oh, all my friends are going like that. And then once they go in, they become fearful, but they think only one thing: oh, Krishna is there, he will help us. And then after seeing, they become scared after that. Then Krishna says, okay, well, now it is time for me to help my friends. And then he goes into the Aghasura's mouth, and Aghasura closes its mouth. Then what happens? He takes life air out of Aghasura also through the head, right? Through the head, the life air comes out. So it's like for Krishna, nothing is, there is no limit for his capacity. But for us, actually our capacity is limited to our body, right? And this body is maintained by Prakriti, and it's given and maintained by him. So our capacity is zero. That's the reason we have to understand we cannot compete with the Lord. In the first 2 slokas, when we heard in the beginning, that is, we are trying to imitate the Lord. So we have to understand, oh, I cannot compete with the Lord. I cannot imitate what he does. So that's the reason the Lord says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. You take my shelter. That means what? Who takes shelter? A person who gets defeated, who accepts defeat. He is the one who takes shelter of that person, right? In the same way, we are, by chanting the holy name, Lord Chaitanya is telling to chant the holy name. So while chanting, what happens? We are giving attention to the Lord instead of ourselves. So we are moving from my consciousness to Krishna consciousness. That means we are trying to surrender to the Lord, right? So that's what happens. In the same way, we are surrendering to the Lord, right? In the same way, Maharaj Yudhishthira also contemplates this, and he considers to go back home, back to Godhead. So let us see 33rd. Kunti, after overhearing Arjuna's telling of the end of the Yadu dynasty and disappearance of Lord Krishna, engaged in the devotional service of transcendent personality of Godhead with full attention, and thus gained a release from the course of material existence. So here Kunti Mata also says, oh, after hearing, she also does pure devotional service, and they are all they say, oh, they are all relinquishing their designations, and she also does pure devotional service, and she says, oh, let me get out of this material world, like that. She also comes to a conclusion, I have to leave this material world, like that, right? In 34th sloka, the supreme unborn Lord Sri Krishna caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, and thus he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, though both are the same to the controller. So here Srila Prabhupada tells about the sons of Kuvera, right? There are two sons, Kuvera. Who are they? Manigriva and Nalakuvera, who were naked due to their intoxication, right? Similarly, we are also intoxicated with our designations of father, mother, son, daughter, sister, brother, doctor, engineer, software programmer, lawyer, etc., etc., etc. So many designations we have created, right? MP, MLA, etc. But and what happens because in this here, because we become conditioned, right? Become conditioned. But when we become so much conditioned, we can't enjoy too much also, right? And it becomes addiction, and it becomes, there is no joy in that, right? It becomes only anxiety, nothing else. For example, we have people who smoke cigarette and alcohol, illicit sex, etc. What happens? They seem to enjoy in the beginning, but later on it becomes an addiction, and they're not able to control themselves. So it becomes more of an anxiety than happiness. So that's why here also, when we understand that these are all temporary, just for this life, and is related to the body, not the soul, and by the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, we can also be liberated by the Lord, right? Same as the way done to Manigriva and Nalakuvera. So here we have seen in Damodar Leela, Krishna gets bound by Yashoda Mata, but even while at that time, he is thinking about how to deliver the fallen souls. So he delivers Manigriva and Nalakuvera, right? So the Lord is always thinking, oh, these jivas back home, back to God. So 31st sloka is the Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he maintained to diminish the burden of the earth. Just like magician, he relinquished one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others. So the problem is, due to envy, we can't understand the Lord, right? Shishupala is there, right? He was always angry with the Lord. And when he does all the 100th mistake, Lord Krishna kills him. But even at that moment, the Lord was covered by Brahmajyoti. Shishupala is there. The Lord is there in front of Shishupala, but he can't see the Lord. Why? Because he was angry. He was envious of the Lord. That's the reason, right? So that's why we have to stop envying the Lord. And what we have to do, we have to start loving the Lord. And by removing our designations and independent enjoyer. That's the reason, right? Asuras can't understand the Lord, but who can understand the Lord? Only devotees can understand the Lord. That we have to understand here. And 36, 37. Okay. Now, Maharaj Yudhishthir, what does he do? Was intelligent enough to understand the influence of age of Kali, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating, violence throughout the capital, state, home, and among individuals. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home, and he dressed accordingly. So here we have to understand one very important thing. Nepotism, right? False. There is so much in this Kali Yuga. See, we have been only 5,000 years until now. Still 427,000 years to go, right? In this Kali Yuga. And what are the symptoms? Avarice. That means hate, falsehood, cheating, diplomacy. So many things are there. And what to say of the future? In the future, oh my God, it is said that people will eat their own kids because lack of food. People will start eating their own kids. The situation will be so bad in later parts of Kali Yuga. So why is this influence of age of Kali? Is because it's because of who are godless. People are godless, and they think that they are civilized men, but actually they are godless. We want to be happy in this material world, but how is it possible? It's not our home, right? It is a material world. It is Maya, in illusion. That's why we can never be happy in this material world. We are thinking it is our home, but it's not actually our home, right? For example, we may be happy in our home, but the thing is, we at one time or the other, we have to get out of the house, and we don't know what's going to happen next, right? So we don't know how Kali Yuga will attack us when we go out. So that's why we see people suffered so much for the last 2 years because of Corona. So Lord sometimes gives us tinge of like, he gives us these problems so that we understand God. At that time, it is said that at the time of Corona, people bought a lot of agarbattis, and astrology services have increased. That means people got worried. Oh my God, what's going to happen to my future? And they became devotional. So when these problems are given by the Lord, slowly people will start, so that people will understand, oh, I have to become devotional, like that. See, so that's why Lord creates such problems now and then. So in the same way, Yudhishthira Maharaj also wanted to set as an example for us, right? Srila Prabhupada says, the moment there is young person in the family to maintain the family affairs, the old should at once retire from upliftment of spiritual realization rather than waiting for Yamaraj to remind us, right? So Srila Prabhupada says the politicians are there. They occupy a lot of spaces, right? They occupy a lot of a lot of designations. But here Srila Prabhupada is telling, it should be given, the chance should be given to the youngsters, and the old people, when they get old, they should slowly start getting to understand the spiritual realization. So that's what Srila Prabhupada is telling here. And then what Yudhishthira Maharaj is doing, let us see in 38th sloka. Thereafter, in capital of Hastinapura, he enthroned his grandson, who was trained and equally qualified as the emperor and master of all land bordered by the seas. So what does Yudhishthira Maharaj do? He enthrones his grandson. Who is that? Maharaj Parikshit. He trained him equally qualified as a good emperor. Right? And in 39th sloka, then he posted Vajra, the son of Aniruddha, grandson of Lord Krishna, at Mathura as the king of Surasena. Afterwards, Maharaj Yudhishthira performed a Prajapatya sacrifice and placed in himself the fire for quitting household life. So Maharaj Yudhishthira Maharaj accepts Varnashrama Dharma. What is this? It is divided. It divides the human life into 4 divisions of occupation and 4 orders of life. What is that? Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa, right? So Srila Prabhupada says in this purport, modern politicians, they don't want to retire or hand over to the younger generation, right? So, and Srila Prabhupada also says, the last 15 or 20 years before death, we should just devote for pure devotion service. The mind is actually absorbed in fruitive acts and material enjoyment. Therefore, no chance of getting out of conditioned life or material bondage. So that's why we should not put ourselves into these fruitive acts and material enjoyment. We have seen it in Prabhupada's lecture also. What did he say? The greed, acceptance, rejectance, and there is no end to greed. So that's why we have to stop this cycle, right? So in 41st, what Maharaj Yudhishthira at once relinquished all his garments, belt, ornaments of the royal order, and became completely disinterested and unattached to everything. So he relinquished all his designations. In the same way, we should also relinquish our designations, right? Only then we will be eligible to be ready to go back home, back to Godhead. Thus, he amalgamated all the sense organs into the mind, and then the mind into the life, life into breathing, his total existence into embodiment of 5 elements, and his body into death. Then, as a pure self, he became free from material conception of life. So mind needs to be purified, right? By practice of transcendental loving service of the Lord and constantly engaged in the lotus feet of the Lord, right? Then definitely we can get purified. We won't get another material body after death. That is stop competing with the Lord, and we will become servant of the Lord, not the master. So we should become constantly engaged in the lotus feet of the Lord. Then what will happen? We will become purified from the material contamination of life. So thus annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he merged them in one nescience and then absorbed that nescience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. So see here in this stage, so what we have seen here is when we constantly engaged in the lotus feet of the Lord, this stage is called Jivan Mukta stage, right? Or liberated state, even being in this material world, right? So we have some wonderful speakers in our congregation also, right? Radhapati Gopinath Prabhuji, Vidura Madhav Prabhuji, Sri Ramchandra Prabhuji, Tirtha Chaitanya Prabhuji, so like that, and a lot of others also. They give such a wonderful, they're so much self-realized people. They give such a wonderful realizations so that we can also understand, and it feels a lot of joy and also hope that yes, we can learn from them, and we can also one day hopefully we can also become like that, right? So they have achieved that. They have come to the Jivan Mukta stage. So we should also try by giving pure devotional service to the Lord, right? So here what's happened after that, Yudhishthira Maharaj dressed himself in torn clothing, gave up eating all solid foods, voluntarily became dumb, and let his hair and hand loose. All this combined to make him look like an urchin, a madman with no occupation. He did not depend on brothers for anything, and just like a deaf man, he heard nothing. So what he does is he stopped eating all the solid food. Voluntarily he becomes dumb, right? So it's like he also stopped becoming dependent of his brothers also. So slowly he's giving up his designations, right? So he then started towards the north, treading the path accepted by his forefathers and great men, to devote himself completely to the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he lived in that way wherever he went. So at this certain stage of life, all should leave the household connections, right? For example, who has got very much attached to family and throne was Dhritarashtra, right? What happened? And he guided his sons also in the wrong way. Later, what happened? He was forced, like they lost the war, and then he lost all his 100 sons, and then he was forced to leave. So we shouldn't get to that stage. We should, before itself, we should understand, oh, I'm getting old, I should start. Actually, it's not even getting old. Even in younger, so we should understand the God consciousness and all that. But at least when a person is not haven't done anything in the young age, at least in the old age, he should start understanding about the Lord and start doing pure devotion service. And the other one who had pride was Indra. He was also had a lot of pride, right? So, and what happens? In the Govardhan Leela, he removes all his pride and he takes shelter of the Lord. In the same way, because he had pride because of his designation. So that's why we should not become too much attached to our designations. So the younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhishthira observed that the age of Kali had already arrived throughout the world, and that the citizens of the kingdom were already affected. They decided to follow the footsteps of their elder brother. They all had performed all the principles of religion, and as a result, rightly decided that the lotus feet of the Lord Sri Krishna are the supreme goal of all. Therefore, they meditated upon his feet without interruption. Here, Srila, and what did they do? Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation, right? This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in material conception of life. But the Pandavas become completely washed off all the material contamination, attain that abode in their same body. Say here, we have to do it without deviation. It's very important, doing pure devotion service without deviation. So here, Srila Jiva Goswami affirms the statement made by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 14.26. Anyone who executes devotion service systematically without deviation can attain the perfection of Brahman, right? So Brahman means what? Freed from all material contamination, thereby surpassing the contamination of three modes of material nature. They will attain Goloka Vrindavan without changing their current bodies. So this is very important to understand. Now Vidura also, what does Vidura do? He also, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhasa because he was absorbed in the thought of Krishna. He was received by the denizens of Pitral Loka planet, where he was returned into his original post. So what happens here is, actually Vidura was Yamaraj. He was cursed by Mundaka Muni. Then he will become a Shudra. So he becomes born as a Shudra, and later he understands the Lord. He does pure devotion service. He serves the Lord very nicely, right? And then he understands, yes, it is time to go. And then when he leaves, he gets his previous post of Yamraj. Okay, so he also does very nice pure devotion service, and he leaves the body, and he goes back to Godhead, to his previous post of Yamraj. So here what happens is, Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, were leaving home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Both she and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and attained the same results as their husbands. So generally, wife is taken care of the husbands, right? Here she understands, oh, my husbands are not taking care of me, so it is time for me to go back home, back to Godhead. So that's why she also instructs Subhadra. So they all go back home, back to Godhead. So here it is said that people when we are living, yes, people will take care of us, but at the time of death, no one will be there with us. It is all about us only. So we have to understand that point, and then we should mentally, we should get ready at the time of death. Oh, what's going to happen? How? We have to be mentally ready to go back home, back to God. At that time, no one will help us, right? So because we are not able to tell, we are not able to ask help also at that time. So we should be ready for the time of death. In the same way, Draupadi also says, she's already trained. See, here it says she's already trained. So she took up the concentration upon the Lord of Vasudeva and also goes back home, back to Godhead in the same body. Here, this is the most important shloka of all, part 2. Dear devotees, see, the subject of the sons of Pandu for the ultimate goal of life, back to Godhead, is fully auspicious and is perfectly pure. Therefore, anyone who hears this narration with devotional faith certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life. So let us read the purport also. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam is a narration about the personality of Godhead, and the devotees of the Lord are like the devotees of the Lord, like was. The narration of the personality of Godhead and his devotees is absolute in itself, and thus to hear it with devotional attitude is to associate with the Lord and constant companions of the Lord. And by the process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can attain the highest perfection of life, namely going back home, back to Godhead without failure. See, this is very important. Our Sri Hari Prabhuji and the team keep telling us, please take Srimad Bhagavatam, please take Srimad Bhagavatam. So why? Because if we read it properly in the association of the devotees, we will become eligible to going back home, back to Godhead. And what is another thing that we have to do? Chant the holy name of the Lord, right? So chanting and hearing, it's not like just chanting. We have to hear the Lord's, whatever we are chanting, we have to hear also. Then that means we are giving attention to the Lord instead of giving attention to the senses. So then we will become eligible to going back home, back to God. So thank you, dear devotees. This is how all the Pandavas and everybody, they go back home, back to Godhead. In the next chapter, we will see how Parikshit Maharaj receives the age of Kali, right? So that is also another very nice chapter. Let us all see you all in the next week, next Saturday. Thank you, dear devotees, for joining this session. Any doubts, you may please ask. Hare Krishna. So we have heard very nice chapter. This is a very nice chapter. We have heard about how Krishna has helped Arjuna, and also how Pandavas, they relinquished their designations. They thinking that if Krishna is not there, we are zero, right? So they also start doing pure devotion service, and they go back home, back to Godhead. That means the designations of this life is temporary. We have to go back home, back to Godhead. That is more important. That's what we have learned here. So if there are no questions, we can end the session. Hare Krishna.